Underwater archaeology is the scientific study of human history through remains found beneath water, like shipwrecks, submerged cities, and ancient ports. This field uses many names depending on the focus: marine archaeology, which looks at sea-based remains; nautical archaeology, which centers on ships and maritime transport; and submerged archaeology, which means sunken cities and settlements. The most inclusive term is underwater archaeology, which covers all these areas and more, including rivers and lakes. Underwater archaeology examines objects and sites left by people in water environments. The classic definition, given by K. Muckleroy in 1978, focuses on material remains of man and his activities on the sea. Today, the definition has expanded to include lakes and rivers, not just the sea. The field studies everything from ancient boats and ports to cities lost to rising sea levels. Dr. Sheila Tripathi highlights that nautical archaeology is mainly about how ships were built and used. Dr. Alok Tripathi broadens the scope to include trade, ports, and coastal communities, showing how underwater archaeology connects with many aspects of past human life. The roots of underwater archaeology are still debated today. Early on, researchers mostly focused on studying shipwrecks, but Keith Muckleroy was a key figure who, really expanded the field to include all kinds of human activity related to water, not just ships. His work actually helped create a more organized and scientific approach to underwater archaeology. Underwater archaeologists use different types of evidence. Archaeological evidence includes, for example, Harappan terracotta boat models and ship engravings on ancient coins and temple walls from cultures like the Satavahanas and Cholas. And then there's literary evidence, ancient Indian texts, such as the Vedas and Arthashastra, and even foreign accounts like those by Pliny and Xuanzang, which describe maritime activities. So, the field really aims to discover and study submerged cities, ports, and trade routes. It also tries to reconstruct ancient trade networks and shipbuilding techniques, Another important goal is to understand the lives and economies of maritime communities and investigate how people navigated and traveled by water. Plus, it's vital to preserve underwater artifacts, which honestly are often at risk from saltwater corrosion. And of course, we also monitor changes in coastlines and water levels. We use technology like sonar, underwater robots, also called ROVs, and photogrammetry to map and study underwater sites. These tools really make a huge difference in what we can find and learn down there. Projects in this field absolutely require teamwork between several kinds of experts. Underwater archaeologists dive to study and recover artifacts. Marine scientists analyze environmental changes, like erosion or sea level rise. And technical experts operate equipment, such as sonar and GPS, and help with navigation and mapping. It's this collaboration that makes discovery possible, honestly. A good example is Dr. S.R. Rao, who led India's first major underwater excavations at Lothal and Dwarka. He worked closely with scientists and technical specialists to explore these sites. Underwater archaeology projects usually have three main teams: the onshore team, which coordinates the project and monitors progress; the vessel team, which manages navigation and communication at sea; and the diver team, which conducts underwater surveys and excavations. This structure ensures smooth operations and safety. After World War I, global marine expeditions, like the Dana and Galathea expeditions, inspired countries to study the oceans more closely. In India, the Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute was set up in 1947, followed by the National Institute of Oceanography in 1966. Technological advances after World War II, such as sonar, remotely operated vehicles, and better diving equipment, really transformed underwater archaeology. Famous discoveries like the Titanic and King Henry VIII's ship Mary Rose showed the power of these new tools. In India, Dr. S.R. Rao's work at Lothal and Dwarka in the 1980s was groundbreaking, although, some of his interpretations are still debated. India's really long coastline, stretching over 7,500 kilometers, and its incredibly rich history, make it a pretty important area for underwater archaeology. Ancient texts even mention shipwrecks and sea voyages, and the Indus-Sarasvati civilization, which thrived between 2600 and 1900 BCE, had major ports like Lothal. These ports actually traded with places as far away as Mesopotamia. So let's talk about a few key examples. Lothal, for instance, is an ancient dockyard that really shows India's early maritime trade. Then there's Dwarka, a submerged city often linked to legends and historical trade routes. And Mahabalipuram, where the sunken temple ruins were partly exposed by the 2004 tsunami. Just fascinating, honestly. Over 200 underwater sites have now been identified in India. Institutions like the National Institute of Oceanography, the Archaeological Survey of India's Underwater Archaeology Wing, and universities such as Tamil University and Andhra University are all really active in research and training for this field. So underwater archaeology actually uses a three-step process. First up is site selection and survey. Experts, they study old maps, seabed topography, and even local ecology to choose the most promising locations. Surveys can be done underwater, like when searching for shipwrecks or ruins, along the shoreline to study ancient ports, or even on land near the coast, examining those old fishing villages. Underwater survey techniques. They often start with the traditional methods. Divers use grids and markers to map sites, making sure every detail is carefully recorded. Scientific tools have really changed the game. Tools like side-scan sonar are used for mapping the seabed, while underwater cameras and echo sounders help in finding sunken structures. Magnetometers are great for detecting metal, and of course GPS helps with precise location. And then, diving gear like scuba and surface-supplied air systems allow divers to work longer and deeper underwater. Documentation and analysis are just as important. Divers photograph and film artifacts, and sometimes they even create three-dimensional models. Sediment is carefully removed with dredges or airlifts, so that nothing is missed during the process. Surface teams help analyze and interpret the data. Case studies, at Dwarka, sonar and remotely operated vehicles mapped submerged structures. The Titanic was found using sub-bottom profilers and magnetometers. At Mahabalipuram, photomosaics helped reconstruct temple ruins. How are sites excavated? Excavation underwater is, different from on land. Grid system. The site is divided into squares for careful digging and mapping, which was used at Dwarka. Non-grid. Sometimes artifacts are simply recorded as found. Recovery. Small items are carried up by hand, large objects are floated up using airbags. Modern methods. Airlifting removes sediment, and remote sensing helps map deep sites. So, some of the challenges we face include poor visibility underwater, rapid corrosion of artifacts, and, really high costs for equipment and conservation. Since 1981, underwater archaeology in India has definitely grown, with more than 40 sites explored so far. Dwarka has revealed ancient settlements and stone anchors, while Bet Dwarka produced Roman amphora fragments and coins, which, shows the trade links that existed. Vijayadurga and Mahabalipuram have also yielded some really important finds. However, the field faces problems. Funding and expertise, for instance, there just aren't enough trained specialists or resources. And, publication delays are a real issue too. So many discoveries remain unpublished, which really limits public knowledge. Looting and conservation are big concerns. Artifacts are at risk, and honestly, India is still catching up with global standards for protection. Recent efforts like three-dimensional modeling of Dwarka's ruins show progress. The ASI's Underwater Archaeology Wing and UNESCO conventions aim to protect this heritage. So, in conclusion, underwater archaeology is, absolutely crucial for understanding how people lived, traded, and traveled by water. In India, discoveries at places like Lothal, Dwarka, and Mahabalipuram have revealed a 4,000-year-old maritime legacy. The field actually combines archaeology, marine science, and technology, but it still faces challenges like limited funding, a lack of trained experts, and the need for better conservation. For India to fully realize the potential of its underwater heritage, there really needs to be more investment in training, technology, and of course, international collaboration. Protecting these submerged treasures will, help preserve the story of India's rich maritime past for future generations.